ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله. وبعد. We begin, as always, in the name of Allah Azza wa Jal by asking Him to send peace and blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. His peace and blessings be upon him and his family. As you all know, mashallah, we have arrived at verse number 4 of Surah al-Mā'idah. Verse number 4 of Surah al-Mā'idah. And Allah Azza wa Jal turning our attention, as He has in the last part of the verse previously, to that which is lawful and unlawful in terms of food. Now, just one thing to say, of course, that in the previous verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about Him having completed and perfected the religion for us. And as Ustad Adam Dakin talked about yesterday, this implies that everything is self-sufficient, so to speak, in Islam. In other words, nothing left out. You don't have to go guess about, maybe the Prophet ﷺ forgot this, maybe Allah forgot to mention this. Right? All of that can be derived from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And it's in this vein that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then mentions about food in particular. And He says, towards the end of the last verse, He says, but whoever is forced by severe hunger with no inclination towards sin, then indeed Allah is forgiving and merciful. And Ustad Adam mentioned yesterday, the example they give is if a person is in the desert and there's a dead animal and they're starving, they are permitted to eat enough to at least get rid of their hunger in that situation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says in the next verse, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يسألونك ماذا أحل لهم قل أحل لكم الطيبات وما علمتم من الجوارح مكلبين تعلمونهن مما علمكم الله فكلوا مما أمسكنا عليكم واذكروا اسم الله عليه واتقوا الله إن الله سريع الحساب. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they ask you as to what has been made lawful for them. Now keep in mind, this was an ongoing, the Prophet ﷺ was getting asked questions by his Sahaba. He was getting asked questions by the people around him. And he would oftentimes wait until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded. He didn't want to give the wrong response. We have a disease in today's world where people want to respond to everything. They see a comment on television or they see a comment on social media and all of a sudden they're quick to comment back. But restraint is actually what our religion asks of us. And here the Prophet ﷺ was asked these questions and he would oftentimes restrain or refrain from answering till he knew what the response was. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they ask you concerning what has been made lawful to them. Tell them, قُلْ made lawful to you are good things, tayyibat. All of the good things. And this is a reference to other parts in the Quran, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that eat of the good things that we have provided for you. Right? So there's a general kind of ruling that there's so much goodness in the world for us to be able to engage in and eat. Oftentimes when we think, especially as Muslims, when we think about, the food, we oftentimes think about all the restrictions. We're not allowed to have this, we're not allowed to have that, we can't eat this, we can't do that. The reality is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us so much to eat. He's given us so much, everything is tayyibat, except for the things that He has specifically called out saying, no, you're not allowed to eat, for instance, as Sheikh Ismail recited in the first rak'ah, you're not allowed to eat, for instance, the meat of pigs, right, or of dead carrion. Right? There are certain things that you are not allowed to have. Outside of that, eat of the good things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Engage in that. That's why it's there for us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, made lawful to you are the good things, the tayyibat. These good things that you have to eat, they're made lawful to you. And then he says, and the hunting through birds and beasts of prey that you train. The hunting that you out of the birds and beasts of prey that you train them out of what Allah has taught you. This was in specific reference to people that use dogs, for instance, for hunting. And they had a question about, hey, is this, when we're using our animals, dogs or falcons, the two that are oftentimes talked about in the books of fiqh, are the dogs and falcons, or what they call birds or beasts of prey. These are hunting animals. When you go out into the world with the hunting animals, what's the permissibility about what they catch? If they catch some food for you, what's the permissibility about it? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala making it clear here that what they catch, as long as it's been trained by you to do so, it is permissible. Now, I wanted to, it's interesting that they spend so much, the Mufassirin, they spend some time talking about this. I want to talk a little bit about the conditions that they have for this. I realize, by the way, that many of us are not used to this kind of hunting with game, right? Now we just go to the grocery store and we pick up whatever we need. But here, there are some conditions that are mentioned that I think is important for us to understand the humanity behind some of these verses. For instance, the first things that they mention is that whatever the dog or the bird is that's helping you hunt must be trained and disciplined to do so. It must be trained to do so. In other words, you don't just send a dog out there to go kill something and you go and find what it's killed and then you eat it. Right? These are beasts, or these are animals that are trained specifically for this purpose. Right? They mention, for instance, that even the dogs that are trained, they kill their prey, but they don't eat it. They bring it back to their master. Same thing with the falcons. They kill it and they immediately come back. They do their job and they immediately come back. Again, this is because killing is not a sport. Killing is not meant to be a sport. You just go around killing animals. Right? There's no such thing as that. There's no such thing as indiscriminate killing. Right? In Islam. We don't believe in that. You kill the animal specifically because you have a game, you're out there hunting for food. And the requirement is that the animal does not begin to actually eat the food itself. So it says here that that's the first condition, that the animal is trained to do so. Number 2, it mentions that the second condition is that you should release the dog or the falcon immediately at your choice, not at theirs. In other words, they shouldn't be running after the food, right? You are the one that releases it and says, I see the prey, go get it. Go get it, right? Again, this is all part of the training and the humanity, if you will, of making sure that the beast does only what it's supposed to do. Number 3, the third condition is that the beasts of prey do not themselves start eating the food. You, as the master of the animal, are supposed to go and feed it food, but not from the same thing that it catches for you. So if they have started eating the food, then you leave it alone. Now it's no longer considered prey. Right? Now it's actually the food of the dog. The fourth condition is that when you're releasing the dog or the falcon, you do it in the name of Allah Azza wa Jal. You say Bismillah. Again, the understanding here is that there's no such thing as just indiscriminate killing. A Muslim, even on a hunt, is going to go out and do it in the name of Allah Azza wa Jal, making sure that the hunt is there. And this is, again, we tend to overlook some of these rulings as just being, is this complicating things? Is this making it too difficult? This is making it humane. The whole process as humane as possible. Right? We're not in the business of just going out and hunting for sport and just, killing things for no reason. But really to eat them and to make sure that it provides some nourishment. There are some imams, like Imam Abu Hanifa, who mentions that there's a fifth condition, and that's that the beasts of prey should also have wounded, if they had wounded the game, they didn't kill the animal, whatever it is that was being hunted, but if they wounded it, then you go and you actually do the zabah for it, for the animal. So you sacrifice the animal. All of this, brothers and sisters, again, just a reminder to us that there is no sense of doing things indiscriminately. It's all with a purpose. In this case, even the food has a purpose. And the people came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to ask him about this. What do we do? If we're out hunting and we have food that our animals have caught, what do we do with that? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this. And He said that trained out of, as long as you've trained them out of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught you, it's lawful for you. These things are lawful for you. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so eat of what they hold for you and recite the name of Allah upon it. This is halal. This is permissible that they have caught for you. Just remember to recite the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now it's interesting because when you read it like this, you think that, after they have given you the game, then you say Bismillah. But the Mufassirin, they say, no, you say Bismillah before the animal is killed. Make sure that you're doing that entire process is with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah sari'ul hisab. Indeed, Allah is swift at reckoning. He's swift at reckoning. Right? This is very important for us, brothers and sisters. If you look at just the first 4 verses of Surah al-Mā'idah, and we'll inshallah get into verse number 5 tomorrow, so much is packaged in these verses of what is permissible and not permissible. Right? You get the sense of this Madani's community coming together now, trying to understand, okay, we've established ourselves. How do we live according to Allah's principles? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving example after example of that. And even in the previous verse, reminding people at the very end of the life of the Prophet ﷺ that today I have perfected your religion for you. It's all here. Everything we need in terms of guidance, it's here and available for us. We just have to be those who seek that guidance. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who seek guidance. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who are guided. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the best in this world and the next world and protect us from the punishment of the fire. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لَنَا وَلِوَالِدِينَا وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَوْمَ يَقُومُ الْحِسَابُ رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لَنا وَلِإِخْوَانِنَا الَّذِينَ سَبَقُونَا بِالْإِيمَانِ وَلَا تَجْعَلْ فِي قُلُوبِنَا غِلًّا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم انصر المسلمين مستضعفين في كل مكان اللهم انصر المسلمين مستضعفين في فلسطين ولبنان اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين في كل مكان اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.